Welcome to Orn Oth's Bedtime Stories. Tonight's story, Orn Oth and the Great Star Caper, written by Orn Oth the Dragon and read by Orn Oth the Dragon. This is Orn Oth's birthday present to his fans. During the summer, Orn Oth, the baby silver dragon, loved to be up when the sunrise came. He did not like getting up, but he loved being up early in the morning. So he would go to bed early and wake up about an hour before the sun came up. Throughout his life, Orn Oth had worked to convince himself that it was worth the trouble of getting out of bed early. So over time, he had developed the habit of getting up when he first realized that he was not dreaming, though this sometimes meant that he would wake too early and have to go back to sleep. However, one day he woke up just after midnight and couldn't fall back asleep. He didn't want to wake his family by going downstairs, and he also wanted a good place to watch the sun come up over the mountains from. So he opened his window and climbed out onto the roof of the little cottage where he lived. The cottage roof was made of wooden shingles and was quite steep to help with snow that would accumulate on it in the winter. But Orn Oth had sharp claws that allowed him to use the grooves between the slats to climb up to the top easily. As he settled into a nice spot by the chimney, Orn Oth looked out over the valley. It was very dark, but a few rays of moonlight managed to come through some clouds as the moon was sinking towards the horizon. That was all that Orn Oth's keen eyes needed to see what was going on out in the fields. The grass swayed in a light breeze rhythmically. Then suddenly it was disturbed here and there by animals that moved about. As Orn Oth's eyes adjusted to the scene laid before him, even more he started to be able to tell what kinds of animals were moving through the fields. A few mice scurried in a group and then branched out looking for seeds. An owl swooped down, taking one of them away. In another area, little bunnies nibbled on the tips of grass and followed their own silent shadows. As he watched, things suddenly got brighter. Orn Oth looked up and noticed that the clouds had all cleared away, leaving a sweeping picture of the ink-colored sky decorated with countless stars. Orn Oth gasped as he looked up, and one of them streaked across the sky. Orn Oth remembered reading a book his mother gave him that long ago people used to use the stars to navigate. He spent the next hour staring up at the stars and finding different constellations. Orn Oth became absorbed in what he was doing, so much so that he stopped noticing what was going on around him. That is, until something grabbed him and dragged him quickly down the side of the roof and tossed him down at the ground. Orn Oth was so surprised that he forgot to open his little wings before something on the ground caught him and dragged him off into the grass. It all happened so fast that poor Orn Oth was too stunned to call for help. He was dragged into the tall grass, through the field, behind the cottage, and down into a den at the edge of the forest. As his shock wore off, he realized that he had been taken by 2 raccoons. They had put Orn Oth in their nest with dozens of odds and ends that they had used to decorate their nest. Orn Oth tried hard to remember what he had learned about raccoons. If he could remember enough about them, then he might just be able to find a way out of this mess. Orn Oth thought hard and remembered that raccoons often took or traded for things that were shiny. Looking down at his scales, Orn Oth realized that he had been sitting on the roof and the light of the moon had hit his scales and turned him into a beacon that the raccoons simply couldn't resist. Orn Oth couldn't think of anything that he thought the raccoons might like more than him. He decided that he would have to sneak out and waited until the raccoons started eating so he could try and get out of the den without them noticing. Unfortunately, as soon as Orn Oth took a few steps away from the edge of the dirt wall, one of the raccoons turned around and picked him up and then carried him back to the wall. "Shiny, stay," it told him. Orn Oth huffed and laid back down. Orn Oth lay there and tapped his tail thinking for a long time, not coming up with any good ideas. Eventually, something came to the entrance of the den. "Rodrigo, Ramirez, I found the pocket watch you left on our roof. What is it that you two are up to this time?" a voice asked. Orn Oth recognized that voice. It was his brother Jasper, the topaz dragon. "We traded that for the big shiny thing that was on your roof," Rodrigo said. "Big shiny? What are you talking about?" Jasper asked. "They mean me," Orn Oth called out from inside the den. "Orn Oth, what on earth are you doing on the roof so late at night?" Jasper demanded. "I couldn't sleep and was waiting to watch the sunrise," Orn Oth said sheepishly. "It's our shiny. You have trade, so we keep," Ramirez said. Jasper only paused a minute before coming up with an idea. "You have a very nice shiny, but what about that shiny?" he asked, gesturing to the night sky, glittering with stars as his head swayed back and forth. Jasper had a disability that made it so that he couldn't balance if he wasn't moving. Ramirez and Rodrigo looked up at the sky and stared. "Can't reach that one," Ramirez pointed out. "Nothing is out of reach for a dragon," Jasper winked. "If you get the night sky, would you trade me for your new shiny?" he asked. The two raccoons thought about this for a bit before agreeing. Now all Jasper needed to do was to figure out how to capture the night sky. "All right, lads, take the shiny and head up to Port Mort. We set sail to capture the sky," Jasper said, sounding like a pirate. The two raccoons saluted and then dashed back to pick up Orn Oth and ran out of the den. As they came out, Orn Oth could see that the den was actually under a very large tree. And as soon as they had him out, the raccoons climbed up the tree that sat over their home. Dashing through several twisted branches full of leaves, Rodrigo, Ramirez, Orn Oth, and Jasper came into a clearing up in the highest part of the tree. The branches all curved around the clearing, making an almost perfect sphere, with a hole in the top where the moonlight came through. In the middle of the clearing was a large wooden platform with a large chest on one side where Jasper was rummaging for something. In the center of the platform there was a large steel barrel that had been cut in half lengthwise, and then welded together to make a two-section boat with the words "The Tin" painted on the sides. Ropes ran from several holes drilled into the sides of the barrel halves up to a large net that was holding a big cloth balloon. Orn Oth's mouth dropped when he saw this. The tree wasn't far from his home, yet the platform within was so well hidden that even in the winter Orn Oth had never seen it and had no idea it could have been there at all. From up on top of the balloon, a squirrel came sliding down one of the ropes. "Welcome to Port Mort, Captain," the squirrel greeted. Jasper stood up from the chest, pulling out and putting on a pirate hat and a belt that had a pirate sword on it. "Good evening, Mr. Slim," Jasper returned the greeting. Jasper looked over at Rodrigo and Ramirez, who were still holding Orn Oth, who still could not believe his eyes. "Step lively, lads, we cast off immediately," Jasper informed them. Rodrigo and Ramirez dashed over and hopped in with Orn Oth as Jasper followed. Then Mr. Slim untied the anchor points and the balloon rose into the air. Jasper wobbled to the front of the tin and pulled up a steering wheel, while Mr. Slim pulled up a fan at the back of the tin and attached it to some car batteries. As the fan sprang to life, the tin sailed through the air with Jasper guiding it off towards the middle of the forest. In the light of the moonlight, the tin sailed through the sky over the trees. Jasper had Mr. Slim take the wheel while he reached into his hat and took out a treasure map. "Before I left the Fun Hub tree, I took the sky and put it in a bag. We will raid the Fun Hub and rescue it," he said. Orn Oth gasped. "We're not going to steal the sky, are we?" he asked. The others laughed. "No, little brother, we are simply going to collect it from my old place," Jasper reassured him. Turning around, Jasper drew his wooden pirate sword and pointed it at the largest tree in the forest that was twice the size of the others. "There she is, boys. Prepare to board the Fun Hub." Rodrigo and Ramirez dashed to the sides of the tin and picked up their own little wooden swords and gave one to Orn Oth. Mr. Slim turned the tin to come alongside a branch on the tree. "Let's go, boys!" Jasper yelled, rushing out of the tin and onto the tree. As they all rushed onto the tree, Jasper threw his sword into a small crack in the trunk and jumped. When the sword stuck into the crack, a large portion of the trunk under it swung in, revealing that there was a door before them. Jasper then grabbed his sword at the height of his jump and leaned back, pulling the sword out and spinning in a somersault through the door as the others followed close behind him. They came into a large circular room with what looked like seats carved out of the tree around the edges, and a string of white Christmas lights running around the top of the room. In the center was a spiral staircase. Jasper led them straight for the stairs as music started to play from a level somewhere below. "Hurry up now, lads, they're on to us," Jasper called, jumping up and beginning to climb. Orn Oth had no idea who they could be, but he followed, jumping up the stairs next with Ramirez behind him and Rodrigo bringing up the rear. Jasper led them up through 3 more rooms to the top of the tree, into a large room with windows all around them, and a bed on one side, furniture all around, and a mirror next to a rack of clothes and a changing screen. "Aye, me old room. It looks just as good as when I left it," Jasper said, stomping on the ground next to the bed. A part of the floor bounced up, and Orn Oth saw it was a trap door. Jasper pulled up the lid a little more and reached in to pull out a large bag. "Here we are," he said, holding it up. From below them, the music they had heard earlier grew louder as light began to pour up the stairs. "Time to go, lads," Jasper said, opening a window. Mr. Slim appeared as the tin floated up in front of them. "Jump for it, lads," he called. Rodrigo and Ramirez jumped into the tin, and Orn Oth followed. Jasper tossed something over his shoulder as he leapt from the window, and there was a bright flash behind him as he landed on the tin. "Turn about, Mr. Slim, we haven't got much time," he said. The squirrel spun the wheel, and the tin swung around. They started to head back along the way they had come. Orn Oth looked back and saw 4 shadows that looked oddly like the tin. They were all floating down from the top of the fun hub. Captain, I think we have some company, Orn Oth told Jasper. Jasper wobbled over to the back of the tin and looked out. Don't you worry, little brother. The sun is on our side. Soon as it comes up, they will have to turn back. All ahead full, Mr. Slim, he replied. Mr. Slim flipped a switch by his foot, and the fan on the tin doubled its speed. The other boats began to shrink as the tin outran them. Soon they were landing back at Port Mort, just as the sun started to turn the sky pink. Jasper put his arm around Orn Oth as the tin landed. Sorry you got shanghaied into my old band of pirates, he said. But you really shouldn't be out so late at night without Mama's permission. Orn Oth smiled. It's okay. Thank you for coming to my rescue, Orn Oth replied. They hopped out of the tin while Mr. Slim finished tying the boat to the platform. Jasper opened the bag to reveal black glass marbles with silver flecks in them. They sparkled in the rays of the sun that peeked through the branches around them. Wow, the night sky, Orn Oth said, as Jasper handed the bag to the raccoons. As promised, you get to the night sky and I get my brother back, Jasper said. Rodrigo and Ramirez each nodded and left, taking the bag with them. Orn Oth and Jasper opened their wings and flew back to the cottage to sit on the roof and finish watching the sunrise together. The end.